Welcome back to Grifter or Gifted,
The show where we...
the show where we try to figure out
Yeah.
if somebody is a grifter,
If someone's or gifted.
total grifter, or truly gifted.
Exactly. And today,
Right.
we are diving into the world of Gauri Lankesh.
Ooh, this is a fascinating one.
This is,
Yeah.
it's a tough one.
This is really tough.
Gauri Lankesh, for those of you who may not know, was a very prominent Indian journalist who was murdered.
Tragically murdered.
Tragically murdered in 2017.
Yes, in 2017.
And she is often described as this fearless journalist,
Yes.
but also a controversial figure.
Very much so.
So already,
Yeah.
we've got
Had a good one.
a good one on our hands.
Yeah.
So where do we even begin with?
So she was born in 1962
Okay.
into a Lingayat family.
Now, I have to admit, I don't know a lot about the Lingayats.
Okay, so the Lingayats are a distinct religious community in South India.
Okay.
And they're really interesting because they worship Shiva.
So they're Shaivites, but they have distinct theological differences from kind of mainstream Hinduism.
Okay.
So they've kind of historically faced a lot of discrimination and pressure to conform,
Interesting.
to kind of fit in with kind of the broader Hindu.
So right off the bat, we are seeing sort of this this theme, I guess, of being sort of an outsider.
Yeah.
And
But not fitting in.
different.
Yeah, and standing up for what you believe in, even if it's unpopular.
Okay, so she's born into this Lingayat family.
Yes.
But it sounds like also a family that has a lot of
Her father was
several different influences.
Lankesh.
Yeah.
He was a well-known poet and journalist,
Okay.
and he actually identified as an atheist.
Wow. So we've got
So you've got this interesting mix
a real mix here.
within the family of religious and secular influences.
So she's getting all of these different sides. of
Exactly, yeah. A lot of different perspectives coming in.
different perspectives.
Yeah.
Wow. And her father was a journalist.
Yes, and he founded a Canada tabloid called Lankesh Patrik,
Okay.
which was known for its uncompromising integrity.
Wow.
Really focused on social and political issues.
So she kind of grew up in this world of
Grew up surrounded by,
journalism.
by journalism and activism and, really speaking truth to power.
That's fascinating. And we also have to note that her mother was a businesswoman.
Yes, ran a sari shop.
So again, we see these very different influences.
Yeah, this blend of
in her life.
practicality and idealism,
Yeah.
kind of a business sense, but also this strong moral compass.
It really sounds like the perfect recipe for an independent thinker.
Absolutely, yeah.
So she goes on
Studies journalism in Delhi.
to study journalism
Yeah.
in Delhi. And she works for some big publications.
Huge publications like the Times of India
The Times of India,
and the Sunday Magazine.
Sunday Magazine.
So she really cut her teeth in the world of English language journalism.
Yeah. But then she makes a very interesting decision.
She does.
She decides to go back to Karnataka
Yeah.
and take over her father's newspaper.
Right. And it's more than just taking over the family business.
Right.
This is a transition from English language media to writing in Canada,
Okay, so that's a big
which is the language of Karnataka.
that's a big shift.
Huge shift. Yeah.
It's not just a different language.
It's a different audience.
It's a different way of thinking.
Everything.
Yeah, it's a whole different world.
So why do you think she made that choice?
I think it speaks to her commitment to reaching a broader audience.
Okay.
She could have continued on this very successful path in English language journalism,
Right.
but she chose to go back to her roots
Yeah.
and connect with people in a language that they understood.
So she's really making a conscious decision here
Absolutely.
to
To
kind of
amplify voices
amplify the voices.
that were often ignored by the mainstream media.
And this newspaper,
Lankesh Patrik.
Lankesh Patrik.
It's a tabloid.
It's a tabloid. And it's interesting because they never relied on advertising revenue. They opted for subscriptions
Wow.
to maintain complete editorial independence.
That's a bold move for any publication.
Especially for a tabloid
Yeah.
trying to reach a wide audience.
Yeah, so that already tells us something about
It speaks volumes
Gauri Lankesh and this newspaper.
about their values.
That this is more than just a business.
It's a mission.
That's
It's a
kind of
platform to speak truth to power.
Wow. And she definitely used that platform
She did not shy away from controversy.
to speak truth to power.
Not at all.
One of the things that she was most critical of was
Right-wing Hindu politics.
right-wing Hindu politics.
Particularly the ideology of Hindutva,
Okay.
which she believed was eroding the secular fabric of Indian society.
Let's talk about Hindutva.
Okay.
Because I think that that is a term that a lot of people may not be familiar with.
It's a very complex ideology. But essentially, it promotes the idea that India is a Hindu nation
Okay.
and that its culture and values should be based on Hindu principles.
Okay.
Now, critics argue that this is a form of religious nationalism
Okay.
that seeks to marginalize minorities and stifle dissent.
So essentially what Gauri Lankesh is saying is that
She's seeing this rising tide
this is
of Hindu nationalism
dangerous.
as a threat to the very values of pluralism and secularism that India was founded on.
Wow. And she's not afraid to call it out,
She is not afraid to name names.
even though she
Criticizes leaders from both the BJP,
powerful.
the right-wing party that's often associated with Hindutva,
Right.
and the Congress Party
Wow. So she
for failing to uphold secular values. She's an equal opportunity critic.
an equal opportunity critic.
Yeah, she's
She's not afraid to go after anyone.
playing favorites here. If she sees hypocrisy
Yeah.
or injustice, she's going to call it out.
That's incredible. And it's not just the big political players either.
No, she also takes on what she sees as hypocrisy and injustice at a very local level.
Like, for example.
For example, in 2003, she took a strong stand against attempts to Hinduize a Sufi shrine.
A Sufi shrine.
Yeah, the Dada Pitha in Baba Budangiri.
Now, this might seem like a minor religious dispute, but
But it's actually very significant.
okay.
Because this shrine is a contested site
Okay.
claimed by both Hindus and Muslims.
Okay.
And Gauri saw the attempts to assert Hindu control over the shrine as part of this larger pattern
So she's connecting the dots
of marginalizing minority communities.
between what seems like an isolated incident
Exactly.
and something much bigger.
A broader pattern
Yeah.
of religious intolerance.
This is incredible. She's not just reporting the news.
No, she's framing it.
Yeah.
She's putting it in context.
Yeah, so-
She's challenging the narrative
Challenging.
that's being pushed by those in power.
Wow. And she goes even further than that.
She does.
She is willing to challenge
She challenges those within her own community.
her own community.
Remember, she was born into a Lingayat family.
Right.
And in 2017, shortly before her death,
Oh, wow.
she stirs up controversy at a gathering of Lingayats,
Okay.
where she points out the historical and doctrinal differences between the Lingayats and another Shaivite sect called the Virashaivas,
Okay.
arguing that they're distinct communities with different beliefs and practices.
Now, again, this might seem like a very
This might seem like a theological debate,
niche theological debate,
but in the context of Hindutva, it becomes very political.
okay.
Because she's essentially challenging the idea that all Hindus are a monolithic group
Wow.
with the same beliefs.
She's
advocating for the recognition of the Lingayats
shaking things up.
as a separate religious community,
Wow.
which directly contradicts the Hindutva narrative
Okay.
of a unified Hindu identity.
So she is taking on powerful forces,
She is,
both inside and outside
inside and outside
of her community.
of her community.
That's incredible.
It's really remarkable.
And this is all before
And this is all happening
her murder.
against the backdrop of
Right.
increasing pressure
Wow.
and threats against her.
Okay, so we're going to have
You're
to
going to have to.
take a break here.
Yeah, we need a little breather.
But when we come back, we are going to dive into
Yeah.
the events that led to her death
The consequences.
and really start to unpack,
Yeah.
you know,
This question of
what her legacy is.
grifter or gifted?
Was she a grifter or was she gifted?
Yeah, stay tuned. And it wasn't just threats and intimidation, you know.
Right.
She also faced legal challenges.
Okay.
In 2008, she was slapped with a defamation case.
A defamation case.
Yeah, for an article that she wrote about
Okay.
a BJP leader, Prahlad Joshi,
Okay.
who was a member of parliament at the time.
And what did she write about him?
She had accused him of cheating a jeweler out of a large sum of money, and Joshi claimed that these allegations were false and damaging to his reputation.
So it sounds like he was using the legal system
It's possible.
to silence her.
Defamation laws can be very powerful tools
Right.
for those in power to silence their critics.
Especially in a country like India, where the legal system can be very slow and complex.
Absolutely.
I mean, a defamation case can drag on for years,
Years.
draining the defendant's resources and energy.
Yeah, and even if Gauri ultimately won the case,
Right.
the process itself could have a chilling effect on free speech.
Absolutely. It sends a message to other journalists.
Be careful.
If you criticize us,
We will come after you.
yeah, we will tie you up in legal battles.
We have the resources
Exactly.
to make your life a living hell.
So she's facing these legal challenges.
Yes.
She's facing these threats.
And let's not forget the online abuse.
Oh, right. The trolls, the online
It
harassment.
was relentless.
I mean, this is something that
She was targeted by trolls and right-wing extremists
I feel like we see this happening all over the world,
all the time,
where people who are speaking truth to power,
especially women,
especially women,
who dare to challenge the status quo.
they become targets for this kind of online vitriol,
It's a way to try to intimidate them,
to silence them.
to discredit them,
Yeah.
to make them afraid to speak out.
So she was really under attack from all sides.
From all sides.
The legal system, social
Even
media,
to some extent, from her own community,
right?
people who felt that she was going too far.
It's hard to imagine the kind of pressure she must have been under.
It must have been incredibly difficult.
But she never backed down.
Never.
She continued to write, to speak out, to challenge the status quo.
And that's what makes her story so compelling.
Yeah,
She was willing to risk everything
for what she believed in.
for what she believed in.
But ultimately, her courage came at a terrible price.
It did.
On September 5th, 2017,
Gauri was shot and killed
Gauri Lankesh was shot
by two men on a motorcycle.
and killed outside of her home in Bengaluru.
It was a targeted assassination.
I mean, this sent shockwaves through India and around the world.
It did.
This was a major story.
A stark reminder,
It was a reminder of the dangers that journalists face.
especially in a country like India,
Yeah.
where freedom of the press is increasingly under threat.
And initially,
Everyone assumes.
it was widely assumed that Hindu nationalist extremists
Right.
were behind this killing.
It seemed like an open and shut case.
But the
It
investigation...
revealed a more complex picture.
What do you mean?
So the police arrested individuals
Okay.
who were linked to a shadowy right-wing group
Okay.
that had been targeting rationalists, activists, and writers for
Right.
years.
For years.
And this group operated in the shadows.
Like a death squad.
In a sense, yes.
Wow.
And they seem to be carrying out a systematic campaign.
So it wasn't just about Gauri Lankesh.
No.
She was part of a much larger
A pattern
of targeted violence.
wow, against those who dared to challenge the Hindutva agenda.
And the most chilling part of all of this is that some of those who were arrested
I know, it's unbelievable.
in connection with Gauri Lankesh's murder were later granted bail
Yes.
and even celebrated by Hindutva groups.
It's horrifying.
It's horrifying.
It raises serious questions about the rule of law
Yeah.
and the protection of free speech in India.
What message does that send?
It sends a message of impunity.
When those who kill journalists
You can get away with it.
can walk free?
It creates a climate of fear.
Self-censorship.
People are afraid to speak out
Yeah.
because they know that there could be consequences.
And that's why Gauri Lankesh's story is so important.
It's a reminder that we can't take freedom of speech for granted.
Yeah.
We have to be vigilant
We have to fight for it,
in defending it,
even when it's uncomfortable.
even when it's dangerous.
Because silence in the face of injustice is complicity.
Yeah.
Now, before we move on, I want to address something that may seem a little contradictory.
Okay.
In 2014, Gauri Lankesh publicly supported Narendra Modi, who is a very controversial figure,
Yes.
often associated with Hindu nationalism,
Oh, Hindutva.
with Hindutva.
Right.
So this might seem
It,
a little at odds with
with her other criticisms.
her criticisms of
Interesting.
Hindutva.
So how do we make sense of this?
It's definitely an interesting wrinkle in her story.
Yeah.
Some people have interpreted her support for Modi as a sign of pragmatism,
Okay.
perhaps a recognition that he was a rising force in Indian politics.
Right.
Others have seen it as a betrayal of her principles. It's hard to know for sure
Yeah.
what her motivations were.
It's possible she saw something in Modi that other people didn't.
It's possible.
Or maybe she believed that he could bring about positive change despite his association with Hindutva.
It's also possible that she was hedging her bets,
Okay.
trying to avoid alienating a powerful figure.
Who could potentially make her life even more difficult.
So it really highlights the complexities,
And nuances.
yeah, of navigating a political landscape.
Where ideology and pragmatism often collide.
But regardless of her reasons for supporting Modi,
Her outspokenness
it's clear
and her willingness to challenge the status quo
she was a target,
made her a target,
and her murder
has had a chilling effect.
has had a chilling effect on free speech in India.
Journalists are more cautious now
Yeah.
about criticizing right-wing groups
Right.
or individuals.
For fear of becoming the next target.
Exactly.
So Gauri Lankesh's legacy
Is a complicated one.
is a complicated one. She was a fearless journalist,
A controversial figure.
a champion of social justice.
And ultimately a martyr for free speech.
And her story reminds us that the fight for truth and justice
Is often fraught with danger.
is often fraught with danger, and it compels us to ask ourselves, are we willing to stand up
For what we believe in.
for what we believe in, even when it comes at a personal cost?
It's a question that all of us,
Have to grapple with.
especially in a world where truth is increasingly under attack.
Now, there's one more fascinating aspect of Gauri's story that we need to explore, and that is her very passionate advocacy for the recognition of Lingayats
Right.
as a distinct religious community separate from Hinduism.
This wasn't just an intellectual exercise for her. This
Mhm.
was deeply personal.
Yeah.
She argued that Lingayats had historically faced discrimination
Okay.
and pressure to conform to Hindu norms.
And she saw this as being part of a larger battle against the homogenizing forces of Hindutva,
Exactly.
which sought to kind of erase
The diversity
the diversity and
of
complexity
Indian society.
of Indian society.
Reduce everything to a single narrative.
Wow, and she didn't just write about this.
No.
She took action.
She organized rallies, she delivered speeches.
She even confronted religious leaders.
Who opposed the Lingayat movement.
Wow. I mean, one of the most striking examples of her activism was when she publicly recited a vachana, which is a sacred poem by the 12th century philosopher Basavishwara,
The founder of Lingayatism.
considered the founder of Lingayatism, and this vachana that she recited.
At a gathering of Lingayats.
At a gathering of Lingayats, it essentially rejects the need for external symbols of religious devotion.
It emphasizes the individual's inner connection to the divine.
That's a powerful message,
It is.
especially in a context where religious institutions often wield immense power and influence.
It suggests that true spirituality
Yeah.
is not about outward displays of devotion.
But about an inner transformation.
Exactly.
And she linked this message directly to the contemporary political debate.
By criticizing those pushing for the construction of a grand Ram temple in Ayodhya,
Right.
a project that's closely associated with the Hindutva agenda.
So by reciting this vachana and criticizing this very prominent temple project,
She was challenging the audience
she was challenging them
to think critically.
to think critically about what truly mattered in their faith.
Yeah.
It was a bold move, one that likely made a lot of people uncomfortable.
But it also demonstrated her unwavering commitment.
To challenging dogma and encouraging people to think for themselves.
Absolutely.
And this, I think, gets to the heart of the grifter or gifted question.
Yeah.
Was Gauri simply trying to stir up controversy?
Or was she genuinely driven by a desire to make the world a better place? I mean, it's tough, isn't it?
It's a tough one.
Because on one hand, you see this incredible outspokenness, and willingness to take on, these really powerful forces.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you see this genuine commitment to social justice,
Yeah.
to giving a voice to the marginalized.
So how do we weigh those different aspects of her personality
Right.
and legacy? I mean, what evidence do we have to kind of tip the scales one way or the other?
Well, let's look at her actions,
Yeah.
She consistently challenged those in power,
Right.
whether it was the government, religious leaders, even members of her own community.
Yeah.
She risked her reputation, her freedom, and ultimately her life
For what she believed in.
for what she believed in.
I mean, that suggests
A deep level of conviction.
a very deep level of conviction. It's hard to imagine someone putting themselves in that much danger
Right.
if they were just a con artist.
If it was all just a show.
Right.
And, her work had a tangible impact on the lives of many people.
Okay.
She gave a platform to those who were often silenced.
Mhm.
She exposed corruption and injustice.
Yeah.
And she fought for the rights of marginalized communities.
So that's a pretty compelling argument for gifted.
I think so.
But, I mean, what about the criticism
Sure.
that she was reckless?
Yeah.
That she sometimes made accusations without sufficient evidence?
Yeah, there's no doubt that she was a polarizing figure.
Yeah.
She was known for her strong opinions,
Right.
her willingness to speak her mind, even if it meant offending people.
Right.
And it's true that some of her accusations were controversial
Okay.
and not always fully substantiated.
So maybe there's a bit of both in there.
Maybe.
She was clearly brilliant,
Absolutely.
passionate,
Yeah.
but perhaps also a bit too quick to judge at times.
It's possible.
But even if we acknowledge her flaws,
Right.
it's hard to deny the positive impact she had
She inspired countless people
with her courage.
with her courage and her commitment to justice.
Yeah, and her murder is a stark reminder
A tragic reminder.
of the importance of protecting freedom of speech
Absolutely.
and holding those in power accountable.
It's a reminder that we can't take these freedoms for granted,
Right.
that we have to be willing to fight for them,
Yeah.
to defend them, even when it's difficult, even when it's dangerous.
So was Gauri Lankesh a grifter or gifted?
It's a question that each of us has to answer for ourselves.
I think so too,
Mm.
based on the evidence that we've looked at today.
Yeah.
But what's undeniable
Is that she lived a life
is that she lived a
with
life
purpose,
of purpose and conviction,
and she left behind a legacy
a legacy that continues to inspire and challenge us.
to this day.
And that's what this show is all about. Exploring these complex figures.
Exploring the complexities of human nature.
Yeah, trying to understand.
Grappling with these questions of, are people who claim to be changing the world?
Are they really visionaries?
Are they visionaries? Are they con artists?
Yeah, where do they fall on that spectrum?
And in a world where information is constantly being manipulated,
Right.
and the truth is increasingly elusive,
It's more important than ever
it's more important than ever to be critical thinkers,
to question everything,
to question everything,
to not take anything at face value.
and to demand evidence
Yeah.
before we just accept any narrative as fact.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the life and work of Gauri Lankesh.
It's been a pleasure.
We encourage you to continue exploring her story,
There's so much more to learn.
to form your own conclusions.
Yeah.
And we'll be back next time with another fascinating figure ready to unpack their story and ask,
Grifter or gifted?
grifter or gifted?